Have you ever had soul-crushing anxiety steal your joy? I mean, I'm talking about the kind of anxiety that fills you with dread and fear, that something ominous is an ever-present threat to you. That's what we're talking about today. And before we dive in, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of great new content each week. And thanks so much for tuning into LilyTube. Brené Brown tells a story about how she was up speaking to a crowd, and she talked about, that moment when you go in and watch your little child sleeping in bed, and this love starts to wash over you, and then you think, what if something happens to him or her? And it steals your joy. It makes you fearful. As she's telling this, people out in the audience are saying, oh, why do we do that? But we do it, don't we? We often worry ourselves sick over things that may or may not ever happen. I'm going to make the observation that, until I was in my mid to late 40s, virtually everything I had achieved in my life had been fueled by anxiety. And I got to the point where I would rather accomplish nothing and be a beggar on the street than to live any more of my life with that kind of anxiety. So what did I do to relieve the anxiety? What did I do to replace it with something else? A few ideas. Number one, bite-sized pieces. Don't wear the whole burden of whatever it is that you have to do or whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Don't wear that around your neck all at one time. Break it down into bite-sized pieces. Make a list. Focus on what is my next step. And when that's done, focus on the step after that.
Sometimes just getting it out of your head and putting it on paper is really helpful to relieve anxiety.
A second one is mindfulness and meditation. Now, mindfulness is simply to ground you in the present, to help you realize that you're in a safe place. And so you can do things like, okay, I'm going to rub 5 different textures in the room, and that will ground you in the place you're at instead of being stuck in your head. Meditation can also be a way of releasing a lot of those feelings. Think of them as like storm clouds passing over, and do you want to reach out and hang on to those, or do you want to let them just float by? Meditation can help let that float by. Another idea, radical acceptance of life's inherent uncertainties. We don't know what's going to happen from day to day. I mean, we plan and we do the best we can, but life is uncertain, and accepting that it is will go a long way to helping us let go of things we have no control over.
Well, and I've actually heard that being anxious about something that hasn't happened is like making yourself miserable with the fear that you might be miserable.
Right.
And why do that? Then you're just doing it twice, or maybe even for no reason, because we don't ever know what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Another point, we need to let go of the need to make everything turn out all right. That can be a hard thing to do. As we move through life, especially in our American culture, we're achievement oriented. We want to get more stuff faster than everybody else. And we think we can sort of plan our way out of any problem and work our way out of any problem. And there are a lot of things that happen that we just have no control over, and continuing to try to find an angle or a way to deal with it is just an exercise in frustration and futility. I can give you a very concrete example. As some of you out there know, I had a son die in a tragic accident very recently. And, my brain wanted to go to that place of, let's think of a way out of this. Anybody out there got a way out of it? No. It's something I had no control over, still have no control over. So part of it is realizing I can't fix everything. I can't make everything all right. And a companion principle to that is surrendering to the will of God. Because God could have chosen to save my son, but he didn't, for whatever his own reasons were.
You know, Jeff, I know for years you said you were worried about him dying in an accident.
I was.
Because he's always been adventurous. And,
adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, and it's not like that prevented it.
It didn't.
And it could have made you miserable if you'd worried more.
Yeah.
And it didn't really prepare you.
Of course not.
So you might as well just enjoy the people that you have in your life while they're in your life, because we never know when our time is up. We never know.
Right.
You know, focusing on the things that affect me, but I have absolutely no power to change, especially when it comes to the agency of other people, is what gives me anxiety more than anything else. And this is where the serenity prayer can come in really handy. The serenity prayer is used in AA and other addiction recovery meetings specifically for people who want to break bad habits and change their ways. This is the power of accepting things we cannot change and developing the courage to focus on the things we can change and having the wisdom to know the difference. I personally have experience with these addiction recovery meetings, and they are wonderful. And I have on my fridge a picture of the Savior knocking at my door. And this brings a lot of peace and comfort. And these are the words that I read over and over and over for several years. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender to His will. By following this spiritual pathway, we will find hope, we will feel peace, and we will experience joy again.
Anxiety is a thief of happiness. It makes us hypervigilant to keep us safe, and at the same time, it makes us miserable. Our brain is 2 million years old, and it's designed to keep us safe more than to make us happy. And virtually every mid-single we know has a certain amount of trauma from former relationships, which makes anxiety worse and harder to deal with. In the Book of Mormon, in Jacob chapter 4, if you look at the very last verse, it's very interesting. The author says that he will unfold a certain mystery if he does not get shaken from his firmness in the Spirit and stumble because of his over-anxiety for the reader. Now, I mean, that's kind of a strange statement, isn't it? Over-anxiety drives away the Spirit. Because when we are anxious, we're thinking we have to fix everything. We're thinking it's all up to us. All of the pressure is weighing on us individually, and we're not trusting in God's promises.
You know, I mentioned earlier that I've been in addiction recovery programs where they read the Serenity Prayer, and for me, that is the most calming when I feel anxious about those things I cannot control. And not only did I attend addiction recovery meetings, but also recovery meetings for those of loved ones of addicts. So it was kind of like Al-Anon, but not exactly, but it was for people who may have some codependent patterns that they developed in those relationships with an addict. So that Serenity Prayer followed me in both of those ways, both for myself and the habits I wanted to change, and those things that I discovered that I needed help from my Maker with, and also those things that I would not have power over, which is the choices of other people. So whether it's the choices of other people or our own weaknesses, we have to figure out what can we do and what can we not do, and then let go of what we can't do, because that will really eat at our anxiety, and there's not anything we can do about it.
Yeah, Cathy, I think it takes a lot of courage for people to show up for those meetings and really change from the inside out in a very profound way. And a big part of that is focusing on things we can change and trying to let go as best we can of the things that are out of our control.
Yeah, and then seeking God's help for anything that we're missing that really does need to happen.
Right, trusting in Him rather than, oh, I've got to think of a way.
Yeah. Well, we would like to pose the question to our listeners. When you notice that anxiety is stealing your joy, how do you bring it back into your life? We'd love to hear your ideas about how to do this.
And remember that any time is a great time for more love and joy in your life.
Thank you so much for watching LilyTube.